The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung's words aren't just poetic, they're prophetic. Because when you finally stop performing, when you finally remove the layers the world told you to wear, something remarkable happens. You become powerful in a way that doesn't shout, doesn't chase, and doesn't need to be understood. You become undeniable. Most people don't realize how much of themselves they've edited out just to be loved. We hide our real opinions behind silence. We dim our joy to avoid being too much. We trade honesty for acceptance. And somewhere in that quiet transaction, we forget who we actually are. We become a version that's easier to digest, more convenient, less alive. But here's the truth. No one regrets letting go of the version of you that played it safe. They regret walking away from the version that was fully alive. The version that showed up with honesty, with depth, with emotion, and didn't flinch when the world told them to tone it down. This video isn't about how to be liked. It's not about becoming more agreeable or chasing popularity. It's about stepping into the kind of presence that makes people feel something real, the kind of presence that can't be replaced. And if you've ever felt like you were too intense, too emotional, or too different, stay with me, because those exact qualities may be your greatest strength. They're not flaws to hide, they're signals of depth, of passion, of life. By the end of this video, you'll walk away not only with the mindset of someone who doesn't need to be chosen, but with the inner strength of someone who finally chose themselves. And trust me, when you do that, the energy shifts. People feel it, they see it, and they never forget it. So if that resonates with something inside you, if you're ready to stop shrinking and start becoming, then let's go deeper. And if this message speaks to you at any point, I invite you to like the video, subscribe for more, and share your experience in the comments. Because this isn't just content, it's a conversation. And your story, it matters here. The illusion of being too much. We're taught from an early age that being too much is a problem. Too emotional, too intense, too honest, too passionate, too sensitive. So we learn to shrink. We learn to observe the room, read the energy, and adjust ourselves until we feel safe, until we feel accepted. We laugh softer, speak less, show less. Not because we want to, but because somewhere deep down, we were told that who we are takes up too much space. And space, we've been taught, is something we're supposed to earn. But here's the truth. No one was born to live compressed. You weren't sent here to be digestible, convenient, or easy to understand. And the more you try to make yourself that way, the more disconnected you become. Not just from others, but from your own core. We live in a society that glorifies surface-level calm while punishing emotional depth. You cry. You're dramatic. You care. You're needy. You speak your truth. You're aggressive. But what if none of those things are flaws? What if they're your compass? What if what you've been told to tone down is actually the very thing that makes you unforgettable? The Stoics knew this long before psychology had words for it. Marcus Aurelius never tried to make himself lovable. He tried to make himself honest. Epictetus didn't care if you liked him. He cared if he lived in alignment with virtue. Seneca wasn't writing essays to impress Rome. He was trying to wrestle with the chaos of life and emerge more grounded. These weren't passive men. They were deeply introspective, highly aware, and courageous enough to stand in emotional truth while the world demanded a mask. So let's ask the real question. When they say you're too much, what are they really saying? They're saying you're too hard to control, that you bring too much awareness, too much truth, that you don't play the role they're comfortable with, and instead of facing their own limitations, they label you as the problem. But that's not your burden to carry. That's projection disguised as feedback, and it's time to stop internalizing it. You see, the world has always tried to flatten anything it doesn't understand, but being too much just means you haven't found your match yet, not in love, not in friendship, not even in community. And that's okay, because your job was never to be understood by everyone. Your job was to stay whole, even when it's lonely, especially when it's lonely. And make no mistake, people will regret walking away from someone like you, not because of guilt, but because they'll wake up one day and realize how rare it is to find someone who feels everything, who shows up with everything, who loves with everything. And by then, you'll be too far gone to go back. Not out of bitterness, but because you've outgrown the rooms that required your silence. Your emotional depth is not something to be managed. It's something to be honored. Your honesty isn't something to be softened. It's something to be sharpened. Your passion isn't something to hide. It's your proof that you're alive. Let them call you too much. Let them misunderstand you. Let them drift. Because the ones who are meant for you will never ask you to quiet the very thing that makes you unforgettable. They won't just tolerate your fire. They'll rise to meet it. They'll reflect it. And they'll recognize that in a world full of performance, your presence is a revolution. Stop performing. Start becoming. There's a performance most people don't even realize they're giving. It doesn't happen on stage. It happens in the quiet moments, the way we smile when we're breaking inside, the way we say, "I'm fine," because explaining the truth feels like too much work. It's the way we post curated happiness while living through silent heartbreak. And the longer you wear that mask, the more you start mistaking it for your face. We've been conditioned to believe that value is something we earn through approval, that if we can just impress the right people, say the right things, move the right way, we'll finally feel whole. But performance is exhausting, and the truth is, no amount of pretending will ever feel as good as being seen, fully, unfiltered, and still accepted. That's where the Stoics offer something different. They didn't perform, they practiced, not for applause, but for alignment. Marcus Aurelius didn't care about his image. He cared about his integrity. In his private writings, he wasn't rehearsing clever words for others to admire. He was wrestling with his thoughts, checking his ego, and choosing character over comfort. "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be," he wrote. "Be one." That's not performance, that's becoming. And here's the shift. You don't need to become what others expect. You need to become who you were before the world taught you to hide. That means peeling away the personas, letting go of the watered-down version of yourself that played it safe. That means reclaiming the fire you tucked away, the voice you quieted, the dreams you shelved because someone said they were unrealistic. There's a version of you that's been waiting, not for permission, but for courage. The version that doesn't smile just to be liked. That doesn't agree just to keep the peace. That doesn't shapeshift to belong. That version of you, that's the one who becomes unforgettable. Not because they're trying to be, but because they finally stop trying at all. The moment you stop performing is the moment you come alive. You stop chasing approval. You stop second-guessing your truth. You stop walking into rooms hoping to be enough, and you start walking in knowing you already are. And the shift isn't loud. It's subtle, but people feel it. They can't quite explain it, but they notice something different, something grounded, something real. And whether they know it or not, they don't want to lose it. But here's the warning. Not everyone will like the unfiltered you. Some will miss the version you performed for their comfort. That's okay. Let them go. Because you weren't made to live in performance mode. You were made to live in presence. And the more you return to yourself, the more you realize fitting in was never the goal. Becoming who you are was. So stop auditioning, stop rehearsing, stop waiting to be chosen. The role you're here to play isn't one that requires applause. It requires authenticity. And that, more than anything, is what will leave a mark long after you've left the room. The power of owning your shadow. There's a part of you that you've been taught to hide, not because it's wrong, but because it's raw. Maybe it's the part that feels things too deeply, forgives too quickly, or still aches when no one's looking. Maybe it's the part that lashes out when hurt, or that still questions its worth even on good days. That part, that's your shadow. And whether you're aware of it or not, it's running the show. Carl Jung believed that true wholeness only begins when we stop rejecting these hidden parts of ourselves. He called it individuation, the lifelong process of integrating everything we are, the light, the dark, the brilliant, the broken, not to fix ourselves, but to finally see ourselves as we are. And in a world addicted to image, that kind of honesty is radical. We've been sold this illusion that strength means having it all together, that healing means never falling apart again. But the Stoics knew better. They never claimed to be perfect. They were warriors of the inner world, constantly battling their impulses, examining their emotions, and questioning their ego. They didn't fear the shadow. They faced it. And that's what made them strong. The truth is, you can't become unforgettable by only showing the polished pieces. Because people don't connect with perfection. They connect with the cracks, the rawness, the humanity. They connect when someone says, "Here's the part of me I once hid, but I'm not hiding anymore." That level of vulnerability, it doesn't make you weak. It makes you magnetic. Most people are terrified to look at their shadow, let alone accept it. They run from it. They bury it under fake smiles, overworking, distractions, relationships that feel more like rescues than connections. But you're here because you're ready to do something different, to stop performing and start owning, not just your brilliance, but your brokenness too. And here's the paradox. The parts of you you've been taught to hide, your fear, your insecurity, your rage, your sorrow, are often the exact parts someone else needs to see to feel less alone. When you show up as you are, without shame, you become a mirror. And in that mirror, others see permission. Permission to be whole. Permission to be human. The Stoics weren't emotionless statues. They felt. They struggled. They had doubts and failures. But they didn't let those emotions own them. They examined them. They learned from them. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters." And responding doesn't mean pretending you're unaffected. It means being honest about the fire and choosing to walk through it anyway. So stop hiding your shadow. Start owning it. That's where your wisdom lives. That's where your strength is born. Not in pretending to be untouchable, but in standing tall with your flaws fully visible and saying, "This is still me, and I'm still worthy." When you do that, when you reclaim every hidden piece, you become whole, you become unshakable. And that kind of presence, that's the one they remember. Not because you never cracked, but because you never collapsed. Growth is not a glow-up. It's a shedding. Growth isn't always graceful. It isn't always a glow-up, a success story, or a perfect transformation arc wrapped in a highlight reel. Most of the time, it's quieter than that. Messier. It's sitting in the same place with a different mindset. It's not reacting the way you used to. It's walking away without needing to be right. It's letting go, not with resentment, but with peace. Real growth isn't about adding new layers. It's about shedding the ones you no longer need. The identities you created to survive. The beliefs that once protected you but now limit you. The habits you picked up to feel safe, loved, or enough, even if they cost you your truth. And here's what nobody tells you. Evolving means grieving. You'll grieve the versions of yourself you once needed, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, the one who overgave to be chosen, the one who made herself smaller just to fit in. At the time, those versions of you were necessary. But now they're holding you back, and the moment you realize that, something shifts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining." And that's what real growth often requires. Endurance. The kind that doesn't get clapped for, the kind that happens when no one is watching. It's not about pretending you're okay, it's about deciding that your pain won't define you anymore, that your fear won't make your decisions for you, that your past won't set the ceiling for what you allow yourself to become. The world celebrates outcomes, but the Stoics knew to focus on the internal. Epictetus didn't chase fame or recognition, he chased character, integrity, emotional discipline. Because the glow-up people notice is always the last part. What they don't see is the shedding that came before it, the nights you questioned everything, the choices you made that no one applauded, the moments you said no when everything in you wanted to say yes, just to feel wanted again. You see, becoming isn't about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to hide, before the world taught you that quiet was safe, that invisibility was smart, that survival was the same as living. It's not. Survival is the beginning. Growth is what comes after, if you're brave enough to choose it. And choosing it is not easy, because shedding old versions of yourself doesn't just change your habits. It changes your circle. It changes the way people respond to you. Not everyone will understand. Some will say, "You've changed," and they'll be right. You're no longer pretending to be someone who fits into places that feel too small. You're no longer interested in performing in rooms where silence is valued more than truth. You're no longer willing to betray yourself to belong. That's not rebellion. That's evolution. And the ones who matter, the ones who are meant to walk with you, won't just accept your growth. They'll grow with you. So no, growth isn't a glow-up. It's a stripping down, a deep returning, a shedding of everything you picked up along the way that was never really yours. And what's left when the shedding is done? Something raw, something honest, something unshakably powerful, because now you're not here to impress anyone. You're here to live fully, deeply, intentionally, and that is what makes you unforgettable. Self-respect is a daily decision. There comes a moment, often after the shedding, after the silence, after the grief, when you realize that self-respect isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you choose, a decision, one that must be made every single day, often in the smallest, quietest ways. It's not just in the big boundaries, like walking away from someone who disrespects you. It's in the micro moments, the way you speak to yourself when no one else is around, the way you respond to your own mistakes, with shame or with grace. It's in what you tolerate, what you settle for, and what you let slide because you're afraid of being too difficult, too needy, too much. But here's the truth. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't feel right, you're saying no to yourself. And no one teaches us that better than the Stoics. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to live with intention, to align with virtue, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Epictetus warned us not to hand our peace over to things we cannot control. Both understood that self-respect isn't earned externally. It's cultivated from within, moment by moment, decision by decision. And those decisions? They don't always feel glamorous. Sometimes self-respect looks like turning your phone off when you're overwhelmed, instead of numbing out with distraction. Sometimes it looks like declining an invitation that drains you, even if it makes you seem selfish. Sometimes it looks like getting up one more time after you fell, without asking anyone to clap for you. It's quiet, it's subtle, but it adds up. Because when you start honoring yourself in the little things, your energy begins to shift. You walk into rooms differently. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop chasing apologies that won't come. You stop accepting half love, half effort, half presence, because you finally believe you deserve more. And maybe not everyone will get it. Some people liked the version of you that bent, that overgave, that performed, the one who kept the peace at all costs, even when it meant self-abandonment. That version made them comfortable, but comfort isn't connection, compliance isn't love. And peace that costs you your self-respect is just quiet chaos. So you make a new decision, one rooted in clarity, not in fear. One that says, I will no longer beg for a seat at any table that makes me forget my worth just to be fed. You set the table now. You decide who gets to sit at it, not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. The more you honor your truth, the less tolerant you become of anything that threatens your peace, not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. You're no longer looking for someone else to choose you. You've already done it. And that kind of energy, that kind of quiet, steady power, people feel it, even if they can't explain it. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to beg to be seen. The respect you command begins with the respect you give yourself. So make the decision, again and again, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's not. The world will try to convince you to compromise, to settle, to shrink. Don't. Your self-respect is not up for negotiation, because when you decide, truly decide, to honor yourself, you stop being someone who waits to be chosen. You become someone who leads. And the people who are meant for you, they don't flinch at your boundaries. They rise to meet them. Real love doesn't need to be earned. Somewhere along the way, many of us learned that love is something we have to earn. We learned it through inconsistency, through being praised only when we performed, comforted only when we behaved, noticed only when we fit neatly into someone else's expectations. So we adapted. We became high-functioning givers. We learned to overextend, overcompensate, over-explain, just to feel worthy of love that should have been ours without condition. But here's what the Stoics knew, what so many of us are just now remembering. Love that has to be earned isn't love. It's survival in disguise. Real love doesn't begin with performance. It begins with presence. Not the kind that demands your silence, your sacrifice, or your shape-shifting, but the kind that says, I see you, all of you, and none of you needs to be edited. When you haven't healed, love can feel like a lifeline. You attach, you chase, you mold yourself into something more desirable. You confuse intensity with connection. You mistake anxiety for chemistry. You hang on too tightly, thinking the more you give, the more you'll be kept. But that kind of love is exhausting. It's fragile, and it always leaves you questioning your worth. That's not what love is supposed to do. The Stoics didn't write about romance the way we talk about it today, but they understood the nature of attachment. They knew that anything external, whether it be status, pleasure, or affection, could never be the root of our peace. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." And freedom doesn't come from someone loving you. It comes from you loving yourself enough to not depend on that love to feel whole. When you fill your own cup, love stops being a transaction. It stops being something you chase, beg for, or fear losing. It becomes a gift. Something you share, not because you're empty, but because you're overflowing. And when your love comes from that place, it no longer drowns you. It uplifts you. It doesn't demand. It expands. You see, when you truly love yourself, you stop needing to convince anyone else to. You stop trying to deserve someone's affection. You stop breaking your own heart just to prove you're loyal. You stop settling for love that feels more like a test than a home. And that shift, it changes everything. Because now you're no longer handing people your broken pieces, hoping they'll make you whole. You're showing up already whole, and the right people will meet you there. They won't be intimidated by your depth. They won't call you too much for feeling deeply. They won't flinch when you set boundaries. They'll respect the work you've done to get here, and they'll protect it because they'll know it's rare. Real love, the kind that's rooted in virtue, not ego, doesn't cling. It doesn't possess. It chooses, every day, freely and without fear. And you don't have to earn it by shrinking, sacrificing, or pretending. You just have to be available to receive it. But that only happens when you've first stopped betraying yourself to be loved. So let this be the reminder: you are not hard to love. You are just hard to manipulate. And those who only know how to love conditionally won't know what to do with someone who refuses to beg. Don't make yourself smaller to be digestible. Don't water down your essence for convenience. The right person won't just love you as you are. They'll recognize you. They'll feel something in your presence they don't want to lose, not because you convinced them to stay, but because they see the value in a love that asks for nothing but truth. When you stop chasing, you start attracting. There's a kind of power that doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being less available to what no longer aligns. It's the power of stillness, the energy shift that happens the moment you stop chasing and start trusting that what's meant for you won't require you to beg, perform, or pretend. But most of us are raised to chase. Chasing approval, chasing love, chasing recognition. We're taught that effort equals worth, that the more we push, the more we'll be rewarded. But what no one tells you is that some things only come to you when you stop reaching for them from a place of lack. The Stoics lived this truth with quiet conviction. Marcus Aurelius didn't rush through life trying to grab everything within reach. He reflected, he waited, he aligned. He knew that chasing what wasn't aligned only led to exhaustion, and worse, regret. Epictetus taught that desire is not inherently wrong, but misdirected desire can destroy peace. You're not supposed to abandon your dreams, but you are supposed to stop begging for what's beneath your standards. And this is where it gets real. When you stop chasing, some things will fall away. People will drift. Opportunities will evaporate. The noise will die down, and at first it might feel like loss. But it's not loss, it's space. Space for the things that are actually meant to be in your life to show up. Not because you ran after them, but because you became someone they're drawn to. You attract differently when your peace is intact, when you're not trying to impress, when you're not trying to be chosen, when you're no longer trying to convince someone to value what they don't have the depth to understand. That's when your energy becomes magnetic, because you're not just showing up, you're showing up whole, and people can feel that. Even if they don't know what it is, they'll feel the difference. There's something sacred about someone who carries themselves with quiet confidence. Not arrogance, not coldness. Just a calm knowing that says, I'm not for everyone, and that's exactly the point. That's not ego. That's clarity. And clarity is one of the rarest energies in a world full of confusion. So the next time you feel the urge to chase, to prove, to reach for someone or something that's already drifting, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting from fear or from faith? From emptiness or from wholeness? If it's fear, you're giving your power away. If it's faith, you're standing in it. You don't need to be loud to be seen. You don't need to overextend to be valued. You just need to be rooted in your worth, in your boundaries, in your truth. The rest will align around that. Because the most unforgettable people aren't the ones who try to be everything to everyone. They're the ones who become fully themselves and let the right ones come closer. Not because they chased them, but because they became too powerful to overlook. Peace is the new flex. We live in a world that rewards noise. The louder you are, the more visible you become. The more dramatic your story, the more attention you get. But attention isn't peace, and applause isn't alignment. Somewhere along the way, people started confusing being seen with being settled. But the truth is, peace doesn't perform. Peace doesn't beg. Peace just is. And in a world drowning in reaction, peace has become the rarest flex of all. The Stoics weren't interested in chaos. They weren't chasing status or validation or constant stimulation. They sought stillness. They built fortresses of clarity within their own minds. Marcus Aurelius, despite being the most powerful man in Rome, wrote to himself daily, not to maintain control over others, but to remain in control of himself. Epictetus lost everything external, his freedom, his possessions, but his mind remained unshaken, because his sense of power didn't come from what he had, it came from what he refused to let control him. That's the shift. When peace becomes your priority, your life changes, not overnight, but permanently. You stop needing the last word. You stop reacting to every slight. You stop giving your energy to things that aren't evolving with you. And suddenly, people who once had access to you don't. Not because you're cold, but because you're clear. Clarity is a boundary that doesn't always need to be spoken. People feel it in your energy, in your silence, in the way you don't argue, you just exit, in the way you don't explain, you just adjust, in the way you don't chase, you just choose. And that kind of peace? It intimidates people who only know how to communicate through chaos. Peace doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've learned how to feel without unraveling. It means you can carry emotion without being carried away by it. It means your presence soothes rooms instead of competing for attention. And that calm is power. It's the kind of power you don't have to announce. It shows up in how you carry yourself, in how little you tolerate nonsense, in how quickly you walk away from what no longer serves you, without flinching, without fanfare. Peace isn't passive, it's protective. It's not about avoiding life. It's about choosing which battles are worth your spirit, and most of them aren't. That's what the Stoics were trying to teach us all along, that your peace is sacred, that your energy is currency, that your time is not to be gambled away on anyone who doesn't value it. So yes, peace is the new flex, because it's not easily faked, it's not borrowed, it's not loud, it's earned in the hard, uncelebrated work of healing, of letting go, of choosing stillness when your old self would have chosen war. And the people who walk away because they can no longer access the chaos in you, let them. They were never in love with your peace. They were addicted to your reaction. But you've evolved now. You've learned that silence can say everything, that a boundary doesn't need to be explained, and that sometimes the strongest move you can make is no move at all. So protect your peace. Treat it like it cost you something, because it did. It cost you your past self, the one who over-explained, over-apologized, overextended, the one who stayed too long in places that burned. That version of you was necessary. But this version is free. The Stoic way of becoming unforgettable. By now, you've probably realized, becoming unforgettable has nothing to do with being perfect. It has nothing to do with being liked, being loud, or being impressive. The people we remember, the ones who shift us, wake us up, stay with us long after they leave, are the ones who lived fully in their truth. Not flawlessly, not fearlessly, but fully. And that's the Stoic way. To become unforgettable in this life, you don't need to chase. You don't need to force. You don't need to prove. You need only to become, to return to the version of you that never asked for permission to exist, to the version that felt everything deeply, said what needed to be said, and stood tall even when shaking. Because that version of you, that's the one people feel. That's the one they regret letting go. Not because you tried to be someone for them, but because you finally became someone for yourself. Marcus Aurelius didn't ask the world who he should be. He reminded himself daily to embody what he already knew: virtue, strength, alignment. Don't waste time debating what a good person should be, he wrote. Be one. That's the Stoic path. You stop performing, you stop pretending, and you start showing up in full alignment with who you are, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's misunderstood. Because here's the truth most people avoid: you won't be unforgettable to everyone. Some people will walk away, not because you lacked value, but because your presence required depth they weren't ready for. Don't take that personally. Some people need to lose you to understand what they had. Some people need to grow through their own silence before they're ready to meet your presence. Let them. If this message stirred something in you, if it challenged you, moved you, or reminded you of your own power, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and more importantly, drop a comment below. Tell me, what part of this message did you feel the most? What version of yourself are you finally ready to stop hiding? Because this isn't just a video, this is a movement, one rooted in self-mastery, inner peace, and radical authenticity. If this resonated with you, there's another video waiting that'll take you even deeper into Stoic wisdom. Click on it and keep learning. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you never miss these insights. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.